Hello everyone, Victor is here, and in this video I want to talk about the tricky SN1 reactions, the one that requires some tricky carbocation rearrangements. So let's look at this example over here. In order to figure out what sort of a product we're going to get, we're probably going to need to work through the mechanism. So let's do that. The first step in this mechanism is going to be the proton transfer, in which we're going to protonate our OH group, making a good leaving group. Then our leaving group is going to dissociate, and at that point we always want to double check whether we are going to have a carbocation rearrangement or not. As soon as you form a carbocation in any kind of reaction in organic chemistry, you always want to double check for any possible carbocation rearrangements. So what I have here is a secondary carbocation which is next to a primary and quaternary position. And it doesn't really make any sense making a carbocation on the primary position because it's going to be incredibly unstable. However, we could potentially make our carbocation into a tertiary carbocation if we do a rearrangement doing something about our quaternary carbon over here. And there are two different options that we can perceive. In the first case, we're going to move the methyl group that is sitting on carbon number 1 onto carbon number 5. In the second case, however, we're going to move carbon number 4 towards carbon number 5. And while in the first case it's just going to be a simple methyl migration, in the second case it's going to be ring expansion. So what we're going to get in the first case is a tertiary carbocation, and it's also going to be a tertiary carbocation in the second case. However, in the first case, the tertiary carbocation was merely a result of moving the methyl group, this green methyl group, from one carbon to another one, while in the second case, what I ended up doing, I essentially moved carbon number 4, which kind of dragged the rest of the molecule with it, expanding the ring. And here is something extremely important here. In this case, we form a 5-membered ring versus a 4-membered ring. And a 5-membered ring is going to be significantly more stable because we're not going to have any angular strain that we normally see in a 4-membered ring. Thus, we have a tertiary carbocation in both cases and a 5-membered ring in the second case, meaning that the second case is significantly more stable, more likely to happen. And because of that, we're not going to expect the first carbocation rearrangement to any appreciable extent. Finally, by doing our nucleophilic attack from the nucleophile that we have here, which is a Br-, we are going to end up with our final product. In this case, our final product does have 2 chiral carbons, which means that we are going to end up with 4 stereoisomers. Because during the SN1 reactions or any other reaction involving carbocations, we essentially racemize the molecule and erase stereochemistry at every carbon where the carbocation was. In this case, we had 2 places where the carbocation was in this molecule, which means that we've erased stereochemistry of both of those, even if we had any to begin with. Now, while ring expansions are fairly common on exams, ring contraction, like in this case, are not as common, although I have seen it on a few exams before. So I'm not going to keep a big mystery in this case, and I'm basically spilling the beans right away, telling you what the compound is going to be for our product. So we obviously see that it is going to be a ring contraction from a 7-membered ring down to a 6-membered ring. So let's see how that happens. Well, the first step, like in the previous reaction, that was just a simple protonation that gave me the OH2, water, my leaving group, and once my leaving group dissociates, I form the carbocation. Also, like in the previous case, there are 2 possible ways this carbocation can rearrange to give me a more stable carbocation. In the first case, I'm going to do a methyl shift. In the second case, however, I'm going to move carbon number 3 and make a new bond between carbon number 3 and number 1. So now 3 and 1 are together over here, and the carbon number 2, which used to be bound to carbon number 3, well, now this guy has the carbocation on it. And analyzing these 2 molecules, I see that I have a tertiary carbocation in both cases. However, the bottom one is going to be a more stable carbocation overall because we have a 6 versus a 7-membered ring. And 6-membered ring is probably one of the most stable cyclic entities, so if we have a choice between forming a 7-membered ring or forming a 6-membered ring, we are going to opt for the 6-membered ring, and after the final nucleophilic attack, we're going to get the final product with a 6-membered ring and now the additional side group essentially sitting on it. Here is another fun example. So again, I am not giving any products here, so we will have to work through the mechanism and decide for ourselves what sort of a product we're going to get. And the first step is going to be the protonation, the simple proton transfer from the strong acid that we have here, followed by the leaving group dissociation, giving us the carbocation. Well, as soon as we hit our carbocation, we need to do the analysis of what's going on there. And there are two possible carbocation rearrangements that we can expect. So in the first case, I have sort of like a phenyl group migration. I had a phenyl group that used to sit over here, and now this phenyl group is right there. In the second case, I have a methyl group which used to sit over here, and now that methyl group is right there. In both cases, I am going to make a benzylic carbocation, which is a carbocation, so here is my carbocation, right next to an aromatic ring. And again, carbocation right next to an aromatic ring, in the second case right next to two aromatic rings. And a cool thing about the benzylic carbocations is that they are significantly more stable than regular carbocations due to the resonance stabilization. And the bottom one, because we have two aromatic rings, has even more resonance stabilization than a regular benzylic position, so we would expect that to be our major product for the carbocation rearrangement. However, here is something interesting. The top one forms faster. And that's because the top product actually doesn't form via the regular what would be a phenyl shift, but rather that is an electrophilic aromatic substitution style reaction in which the aromatic ring is going to interact with the carbocation, temporarily forming a 3-membered ring right over here, and then that 3-membered ring is going to break to restore aromaticity because it is extremely thermodynamically favorable to have aromatic compounds, and recreate the benzylic carbocation. And if all of that mumbo-jumbo about the electrophilic aromatic substitution and aromaticity and all of that doesn't make any sense right now, don't worry. You probably haven't covered the aromatic compounds in your course yet, and probably not going to for a while if you are following the regular sequence of topics that we see in the Northern America, but you will eventually learn about those. So for right now, just remember that when it comes to the migratory aptitude, the hydrogens move the fastest. Then we have phenyl rings, and finally we have alkyl groups. And normally I don't see those types of questions being tested, however on a rare occasion they do pop up on the exams, especially if instructors like to talk about the migratory abilities and stuff like that. So there is a non-zero probability that something like that might show up on your test. Lastly, once we have our major carbocation forming here, although it's less stable, it forms faster, we are then going to get the nucleophilic attack and get the final product where we only have one chiral carbon, so it's going to be a racemic mixture of two different stereoisomers. Finally, here is a really awesome question, and this question was submitted to me by one of my Twitter followers. And by the way, if you want me to look at some of your questions and give you feedback or maybe even make a video, feel free to shoot me a message on my social media via either Twitter or Instagram, and I have the links for that in the description below. And one thing that I'm going to ask you, make sure you get to the point right away. I get a lot of messages and I don't have time for just a chit chat, so I'm sorry if I ignore your message. Just get to the point right away, and then there will be a very high chance I will actually see it. So either tag me in a post, send me a DM, and as I said, get to the point. Anyways, let's get back to our question over here. The first thing that I'm seeing in this question is that this reaction is done in the polar protic conditions. The acetic acid that we have here is a wonderful polar protic solvent, so my leaving group dissociation is going to be relatively easy. So once my leaving group dissociates here, I'm going to get a carbocation. And I'm showing my carbocation here in the form of the empty p orbital for a reason. And the reason here is that I want to show that in the Newman projection, because when I do so, it will become obvious that the empty orbital kind of overlaps with the bond between atoms 2 and 3. So the bond between atoms 2 and 3 can shift around, and our carbocation can easily shift around between atoms 1 and 2. It's really difficult to see without the Newman projection, and making a Newman projection is very difficult on its own. So what I suggest you do, grab your molecular model kit and basically build this molecule and see how those atoms and how those bonds align in space for yourself. But once we have our carbocation shifting there and back again, and this is, by the way, an oversimplification. In reality, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that'll do for us. So once this carbocation shifting there and back again, we can have two different carbocationic structures, and I'm actually going to take the bottom structure that I have over here and I will redraw it to make it look a little bit better. So when I redraw it, it's going to look like that. And again, this is a hard thing to do in your head, so I suggest you make that out of your molecular model kit and physically flip it in space and see how it looks like. So now we can actually see that this new carbocation actually resembles my product. And the last thing that I gotta do here is just do my nucleophilic attack at atom number 2, and the attack from the bottom face of this molecule is going to be more favorable because we have a lot of steric hindrance over here, so this group takes quite some space, so it's going to be relatively difficult to attack from the up face. So we're going to be attacking from the bottom face, and that gives me my final product. Do I expect something like that on the exam? Probably not. But this reaction is absolutely awesome, and it gives you a very good example how tricky carbocation rearrangements can be and how difficult it is sometimes to predict, although we might know everything about the carbocation rearrangement, but sometimes we'll have to crack our molecular model kit out and basically play with the molecules trying to figure out where the orbitals overlap and how the reaction is going to proceed from that point on. So if you like these brain teasers, give this video a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss my future tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.